Hello everyone, I am here today with my very first recent reads of 2022. You guys know I love doing this. I would call them mashup reviews, but I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna call them recent reads. So today I'm gonna share with you the very first 3 books I read in 2022. I have 2 mystery thrillers and 1 adult romance. So let's dive in. As always, I'm going to leave timestamps down below if you want to hear about one particular book. The books I will be talking about today are A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon, and The Maid by Nita Prose. Let's get into it. So the first book I read for this whole year is one I was very excited about, and that is A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. I didn't know about this till it came in the November book of the month book, you can see, and I didn't really like it. To be honest with you, I was so bummed that I didn't enjoy this because it had an amazing premise. So this book, please forgive me, I forgot the name. So this is all about a character named Chloe, and when Chloe was 12, she lived kind of, where did she live? She lived in like Louisiana, yes, a small Louisiana town, and all these teenage girls went missing and were murdered, and then her father gets arrested and tried for the murders, and he is a serial killer, and so that really alters her life. So that happens when she's 12, and then it picks up 20 years later. She is now a psychologist in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and girls are starting to go missing again, and she's seeing kind of a pattern, and she's like, what, is somebody like trying to be a copycat killer? Is this just my imagination? What is going on? So she's trying to figure out what's happening, because it's like at the 20-year anniversary of like her dad going to jail for, you know, killing all these girls. So it's all about that. So it's all about Chloe kind of dealing with this, and it sounds interesting. Like her father is a serial killer, he was put to jail, and now these murders are happening again 20 years later. It sounds interesting, doesn't it? But it just wasn't. I gave it a 3 out of 5. It was okay. It didn't live up to the expectations for me. The ending was just too on the nose for me. Like, I guessed it, and they threw another plot twist in there, which I was like, I didn't care about at that point. I don't know. It could have been just so much better with it, with more uncovering things and things like that. I would love to really dissected her dad and things like that, but we didn't really get to do that. It was just all about Stacey's word. No, it was all about Chloe's word, and she was also an unreliable narrator, and I have come to loathe those, because you never know if they're telling the truth or not, because they don't know themselves. And so you're like, is this really happening, or is she imagining it, or hallucination? I don't know. And so she even starts to suspect like her fiance, you know, the typical things, and I just didn't love it. Like, I wanted this to be so much more amazing. Like, it could be a great movie show, honestly, but it didn't live up for me. I don't know what else to say other than I just had really high hopes for it, and it didn't really deliver. Let's talk about a book that I did enjoy though, and that is Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. I have read every one of her books. She started with YA books. She's put out 3 or 4 by now, and I love them. This is her second adult romance book. Her first one came out last year called The X Talk, and I really enjoyed it, and this one I also really enjoyed. So this one follows a character named Ari, who is a weather girl. She's a TV meteorologist, and she really loves her job. She's always wanted to be a meteorologist her whole life, and she also struggles with depression. Her mom has had it for a long time, and her mom let it kind of overtake her. She never sought therapy out. She never took medicine for it. She never got help. And so Ari is very different from her mom. She is very open to getting help and medication and therapy, but she also kind of closes that off to people that she doesn't really know, like love interests, things like that. She's afraid if they know that she's not happy Ari all the time, they're not going to want her, because they only want this good side of her. And so she's dealing with that. She's also dealing with her boss, Torrance. Who is like her idol. She grew up watching Torrance be a TV meteorologist, and she fell in love with it. And so she got to work at the same station as Torrance. Torrance is kind of her boss, and she wants Torrance to be her mentor, but Torrance is too busy feuding with her ex-husband, who is also at the station. And you know, basically one night at the holiday party, Ari meets Russell, who's a sports reporter, and they're like, you know what, our workplace kind of sucks right now because our bosses that are ex-wife and ex-husband are feuding with each other, and they want to be focused more on like the employees and having a good time. So they decided to parent trap the mess out of it. They decided to, you know, get into the relationship, try to like get them back together, you know, kind of the Parent Trap amazingness that it was, where they, you know, trick their parents into being back together again. Think of that and think of this book. And it was just really cute. I love the honest depiction of depression and how Ari deals with it, because every character deals with things in a different way. Anxiety, depression, things like that. But Ari deals with it very differently because she saw firsthand her mother dealing with it, and she's vowed to change, and she's vowed to really not let herself open up to people seeing her dark side of her, if you will, which no, just the real side of her. She always puts on like a front, like she has to be happy all the time. But it was really cute. It's about her and Russell falling in love while also trying to make their bosses fall in love, while the Parent Trap thing. The only qualm I had with it, I wish we had more kind of like news station stuff. Like we heard that Russell was a sports like kind of reporter and Ari was a TV meteorologist, and that was great. I wanted kind of more behind the scenes of working at a TV station, like TV's news station, and more like of how, you know, she comes to love weather. We hear many times that she loves weather, but I wanted to see her like really research some weather. Maybe like there was a bad storm because it takes place in Seattle, like, you know, and her really get into it, like look at the patterns and stuff, because I don't understand it. But I wanted that, and that was kind of lacking for me. But overall, I really enjoyed it. It's a beautiful romance with a side of kind of really serious, heavy topics. So I gave it a 4 out of 5. Would highly recommend you check it out. I just really love Rachel and Solomon's writing. And the last book I'm talking about in this video is a mystery thriller, and that is The Maid by Nita Prose. This one was not on my radar at all for this year, but then when I read the description and it compared itself to Clue, I immediately like loved it, because we all know one of my favorite movies of all time is the classic Clue. If you haven't watched it, do yourself a favor, watch it now. You're not going to be disappointed. So,
how can we possibly find out which of you did it?
What do you mean, which of you did it?
Well, I didn't do it. Well, one of us did. We all had the opportunity.
So this one follows a character named Molly, and Molly is a maid, Molly the maid, and she works at this really like high-end hotel that's very illustrious and beautiful. And Molly loves her job. She loves being a maid. She loves going into the room, doing everything exactly right, putting it to a state of perfection, and leaving. And then one day when she enters the suite of Mr. and Mrs. Black, who stay at the hotel quite a lot, she finds Mr. Black dead in his bed. And she somehow becomes the target for the whole investigation. So it's all about her. And this really focuses on the character, the maid, Molly the maid. Molly has a lot of social issues. I would say she probably maybe has to deal with autism spectrum or maybe Asperger's. I don't want to say because I don't know that for sure, and I don't want to put a name on it or anything like that. But to me, reading it, it really reminded me of that, because she could not read a lot of social cues. A lot of people would say things and would go over her head because she didn't quite understand it. She didn't understand kind of like how a conversation ebbed and flowed, how people took advantage of her very, very easily. It really reminded me a lot of autism because I have an autistic son, so I kind of see that, and I know that's going to happen more throughout his life because he just can't read cues like a neurotypical person can. So that's what I think. But Molly was just such an amazing character. She lived with her grandmother who passed away, and you just really get to see Molly go through and how people take advantage of her because they think that she's different or she's odd and they don't think she's serious. And Molly is a lot smarter than people think, much like a lot of, you know, neurodivergent people are. Molly's a lot smarter than a lot of people give her credit for because she's amazing, and somehow she makes friends. She starts putting 2 and 2 together. You get to see her experience with her and her grandmother, and it was just an adorable mystery thriller. I never thought I would say that. It's an adorable mystery thriller. I would say this is kind of like a cozy mystery thriller. Is that? Maybe it is that, but it takes place all in one setting in this hotel and mainly Molly's apartment, and you kind of go from there. The mystery thriller aspect, it's not really there. Like, it's a great book for a beginner mystery thriller because it's not especially thrilling. You really get into the dichotomy of Molly, the character, of figuring out, you know, what makes her her, how people have just kind of overlooked her, but she's an amazing character. And the end is just so heartwarming. It was kind of a heartwarming book, if you will. Like, this is a mystery thriller, but I don't know if I'd even label it that because it was so heartwarming and I just really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Like, I had a really good time reading it. I kept thinking about it when I wasn't reading it. It's a very short read too. It's less than 300 pages. It's a fast, easy read that I don't know if I would say it's reminiscent of Clue, because that was the whole thing that drew me into it. I really didn't have a Clue vibe from it, but that's just me. Maybe I think too highly of Clue. I don't care if I do, I love it. But it didn't really remind me overtly of Clue, but it was still heartwarming and just great. So I would recommend, if you don't read mystery thrillers, check it out, because I really wouldn't classify it as that. But I still really liked it, so 4 out of 5. So there you have my thoughts and feelings on these 3 books. I would love to hear if you've read any of them, what your thoughts are on them, if I inspired you to read one of them, maybe not read one of them. I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.